and welcome to this video. This is another short air crash investigation little documentary about prop planes which have had accidents and incidents. I'll let Marshall introduce this one because he knows this particular case better than me.
Alright, have you got me on Skype? Everything's working yet?
Everything's good.
This is a Cirrus that crashed. Basically due to the fact that it was IMC conditions and a number of other things, like the pilot not wanting to disappoint his family, trying to get someone back to school, and it basically all resulted in a crash.
Okay, then we'll play the documentary. We'll try not to talk over it, and we'll give you our comments after. This is the documentary.
It's the morning of November 26, 2011. At the Marion, Indiana airport, a pilot, his two college-age daughters, and the younger daughter's boyfriend are preparing to depart in a Cirrus SR-20. It's Thanksgiving weekend, and the plan is to fly the older daughter back to her college near Chicago's DuPage Airport, then return home to Indiana. The 47-year-old private pilot has 207 total hours of flight time, about half of it in this aircraft, November 223 Charlie Delta, which is owned by a local flying club. He is not instrument rated, though he's apparently received some training. How much is unclear. His logbook shows a total of 3 hours of simulated instrument time and 29 hours of actual, but because of issues with how the time was logged, this probably overstates his true experience in IMC. By approximately 8:30 a.m., the aircraft is fueled, and the pilot departs Marion VFR headed northwest. The flight to DuPage will take a little over an hour.
This is where
On the day of the accident, a low-pressure area centered over Wisconsin dominated the regional weather. The system had brought IFR and marginal VFR conditions to much of northern Illinois. It's unclear what weather information the pilot received prior to the flight. But at the time of departure, the area forecast for Chicago showed marginal VFR ceilings with light rain between 9 and 11 a.m. IFR conditions were expected thereafter. Likewise, the terminal forecast for DuPage showed marginal VFR at the time of arrival, broken clouds at 2,500, overcast at 3,500, with 6 miles visibility. 45 minutes after departure, however, that forecast would be amended to show an 800-foot overcast, with 5 miles visibility in rain and mist.
Definitely not
clear
VFR.
whether the pilot ever received the updated forecast. In the aftermath of the accident, a CFI at Marion reported that he and the pilot had briefly discussed the weather just prior to the flight. The pilot was aware of IFR conditions in the area, but pointed out that DuPage was forecast to be VFR at his time of arrival.
Which unfortunately was incorrect by the time he got there.
Yeah, that just shows the
It's now
unpredictability of weather.
9:58 a.m. In the control tower at DuPage Airport, a call comes in from Cirrus 223 Charlie Delta. Radar shows the aircraft 2 miles south of the airport at roughly 1,500 AGL. On the field, the ceiling is 900 feet.
DuPage Tower 223 Charlie Delta.
It's real ATC.
223 Charlie Delta to Page Tower.
Coming in, let me see, visual flight rules. Was wondering if we were going to be available for landing.
3 Charlie Delta, the field is IFR, say intentions.
30 seconds later, the pilot calls again.
DuPage Tower, I apologize. I just flew over your field. I didn't realize it was going that fast.
3 Charlie Delta, it's IFR, say your intentions.
If it's IFR, we're going to move on down. I was just checking. I went down to about 2,000 and could see pretty well, so I was going to see if you were available.
One Charlie Delta, do you want to land at DuPage?
If possible, that would be wonderful.
Do you have the field in sight, sir?
Cirrus, SR-20.
Yeah. Do you have the field, the DuPage Airport in sight?
Yeah, we just flew past.
Misunderstood the
Okay, just
transmission.
make a right 180 and land 20 right, wind 20015.
Right 180, 20 right.
Just turning back round to
2
land.
minutes later, the pilot reports that he no longer has the airport in sight and is given a
Uh-oh.
suggested heading. However, he seems to be having second thoughts about landing at DuPage.
He's not really sure.
3 Charlie Delta, same intentions?
I think I'm about tempted. Is there an airport close that has better visibility? Because I don't want to get in there and get stuck all day.
3 Charlie Delta, do you want to talk to Chicago Approach? They can help with vectors. Are you...
No, I think I'm okay doing it either way, but I was just... do you have a later airport, or report today?
Bit of indecision there. Not
3
sure.
Charlie Delta, Chicago Executive, the weather
No, he's
there
not sure, is he?
They have visibility of 10, their ceiling's 1,500 overcast, their VFR right now.
Suggesting Chicago
Roger that. What's
Executive.
their code?
3 Charlie Delta, it's Papa Whiskey Kilo.
Roger, Papa, Whiskey, Kilo. Thank you again.
3 Charlie Delta, are you familiar with the area at all?
I've done my what am I trying to say? My training there.
3 Charlie Delta, Roger. Would you like to talk to Approach? They can give you suggestive headings and help you get into Milwaukee a little better than I can.
I'm still trying to decide if I want to try to land at DuPage or not. Would you think that's a good idea?
You shouldn't
or
be
not?
trying to land at DuPage. The weather
The
isn't good
DuPage
enough.
tower controller now seems to realize that something is amiss. He asks about the pilot's flight conditions and qualifications for IFR flight.
3 Charlie Delta, are you currently VFR right now? 3 Charlie Delta, are you in the clouds or are you clear of the clouds?
Actually, I am. I'm in and out of the clouds right now.
3 Charlie
Shouldn't
Delta,
be doing
are you
that if
IFR
he's only
qualified?
VFR rated.
I'm in IFR training, and
He's-
I let this get around me.
He's in IFR when he's only
Now,
VFR
more
rated.
alert to the potential danger of the situation, the controller calls Chicago Tracon and arranges to hand the aircraft off to them for help getting to a VFR airport.
Sector 3 DuPage.
Controller's organising his landing for him.
That VFR target approximately
Yeah,
10
controller's
miles north
trying
of
to
us at 2,200.
Yep.
He's in the clouds and he needs vectors either into us or Milwaukee. Looks like they have a better ceiling. And he's not IFR qualified. Can you give him suggested headings to get him to at least Milwaukee?
Wow. What is Milwaukee's weather?
They're showing at a ceiling of 1,500 and 10 for the visibility.
Okay, let me get right back to you, right?
All right, thanks so much.
Hey, are you still there?
I am.
You see about 11 miles northwest of DuPage at 2,000 there? I'm not talking to that guy DuPage Towers. He says he's not IFR qualified. He's looking to go get vectors for Milwaukee if he can VFR.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm just going to tell DuPage to send him over to you, okay?
Okay.
By the time the pilot contacted DuPage Tower, things clearly were not going well. With his attention focused on the immediate problem of flying the aircraft in marginal conditions, he was obviously having trouble staying on top of things. It was the wrong time to be casting about for a plan B. The fact that he ended up in such a bind says something about his priorities that day. Clearly, the mission of getting his
Definitely.
daughter back to school had taken on great importance, but his determination not to get trapped by the weather shows that something else was competing for his attention. Getting there wasn't enough. He also needed to get home. And therein lay the problem. Given the weather, succeeding in one mission meant failing in the other. We can only
Yep,
speculate
definitely.
about what else may have weighed on the pilot's mind that day. The wasted effort of a failed flight, the potential embarrassment of turning back, plans for later that weekend, or perhaps simply the fact that he was a busy man who didn't want to end up stranded 200 miles from home. Whatever the case, the end result was a pilot struggling with indecision, seemingly looking to ATC for advice, but not taking the kinds of action that would indicate he understood the true gravity of the situation.
Definitely didn't.
It's now 10:08 a.m., and DuPage Tower has told the pilot to contact Chicago Tracon, which is expecting to hear from him. The aircraft is now northwest bound, below the Class B airspace. After 5 minutes without word from the pilot, the new controller attempts to raise him.
November 233, Charlie Delta, Chicago approach.
223 Charlie Delta. We are we're heading out of your area and going to get to better visibility.
And November 223 Charlie Delta, okay, you're just going to continue westbound VFR?
Roger that.
But
And
little do
November
the
223
controllers
just
know,
Charlie Delta, just
this
for your
is where
information,
things go
Executive is
wrong.
showing an overcast at 1,500 feet, while Keegan's an overcast at 1,400. You have DePage, and I'm looking up Rockford right now for you. And Rockford is 700 feet overcast.
At this point, there's no indication that the pilot is having trouble controlling the aircraft, though his somewhat confused interactions with the controller indicate that he's under considerable stress.
The page is where we'd want to go, but it seemed like it was lower than 900 feet or 1,000 feet.
Yeah, DePage right now is showing overcast at 900 feet.
Roger that. If that's the case, I think we'll just head to the page.
Now he's going back to
DePage
the
is
page
IFR.
again. That's still IFR.
Roger that. I apologize. I was thinking it was 800 feet. Did you have, where was the closest one to CFR?
And November 223 Charlie Delta, the closest one I'm showing is Executive. And like I said, that's showing an overcast of 1,500 feet.
Roger that. We'll head towards Executive. Can you remind me of their call letters?
Papa, Whiskey, Kilo.
Roger, Papa, Whiskey, Kilo.
Number 77 Whiskey, and climb and maintain 2,400.
Roger, 2,400.
Why is he reading back their altitude?
Number 77 Whiskey, affirmative. 2,400 for me, please.
77 Whiskey, right up 2,400.
And I think someone else read back the 2,400. That was for 77 Whiskey only. Number 223 Charlie
Yeah,
Delta.
you read back the wrong thing.
223 Charlie Delta.
November 3 Charlie Delta. I just want to make sure that altitude restriction was not for you.
Roger, 2,400 and hold.
Negative 223 Charlie Delta.
Why?
That altitude was not for you,
That
sir.
wasn't for
Maintain
you.
VFR.
No, he got the transmission
A
wrong
few
there.
minutes later, the pilot tells the approach controller that he's changed his mind about landing at Milwaukee.
See, he had a plan
Sierra
then, but he's got rid of
223
it now.
Charlie Delta Executive ATIS information. Victor is current. And let me know when you can navigate direct. And would you like flight following?
At this point, I don't want to mess with the weather. I'm going to get out. I don't want to get stuck in here.
He's worried about getting back still.
223 Charlie Delta. Okay, so you're no longer inbound to Executive?
No, we've navigated out of your airspace.
Here's 223 Charlie Delta. Frequency change is approved.
Roger, 223 Charlie Delta.
You can see he's very inexperienced.
By the time of this
Yeah.
last exchange, the pilot has turned left to a westerly heading, possibly to continue the search for a VFR field, possibly in preparation to head home.
Well, why not going to
A
Chicago?
minute later, he begins
Executive.
another turn, this time to the right. The turn becomes a descending spiral, which continues until radar
No.
contact is lost at roughly 900 feet AGL. On the ground,
gonna crash.
witnesses report hearing what sounds like an airplane doing aerobatics. Seconds later, the doomed Cirrus emerges from the cloud bottoms in a 70-degree dive. As the onlookers watch
Hello?
helplessly, it plunges to the ground and disintegrates, instantly killing the pilot and his 3 passengers.
Hey, you guys remember that 223 Charlie Delta? Can you have calls, find someone to talk to him and call me back really quick? It's kind of important.
223 Charlie Delta, a guy out of DuPage that
Yeah.
was having problems.
Yeah.
Get into Executive, okay?
No, he decided to go on his own. Last we saw him, he was about 5 north of Lake in the Hills, northbound, and I lost radar on him. He was like 1,800 feet.
The crash of Cirrus 223 Charlie Delta is a tragic, but sadly typical example of the kind of accident that kills more pilots than thunderstorms, icing, and all other weather phenomena combined. In a way, though, the accident is anything but typical. What's different is not the proximate cause, poor weather and spatial disorientation, but the fact that the pilot, in his discussions with ATC, so clearly articulated a mindset that contributes to far too many aircraft accidents. They say it takes 2 to tango. In training materials, we read about the insidious qualities of low ceilings and poor visibility, the ways they can lure a VFR-only pilot deep into worsening conditions, and in doing so, make escape difficult or impossible. But in reality, of course, we as pilots are almost always complicit in our own entrapment. There's somewhere we need to be. There's something we want to do. There's some worry about disappointing friends or family. about failing in the task we've set for ourselves. With such thoughts, we bind ourselves to a course of action, and it's only at the end, when the horizon suddenly tilts and the mind can't make sense of what the eyes are telling it, that we understand the true gravity of the situation. There's no single solution to the problem. Clearly, a degree of respect for one's own limitations as a pilot, and a corresponding respect for the unpredictability of weather, is part of the answer. The presence of mind to step back, recognize a deteriorating situation, and take action is another. And perhaps a more honest acknowledgement of how much is at stake is part of the answer too. In this case, the price of failure was 4 lives. But it was also the years of grief for those they left behind, the nightmares of those who saw it happen, and the doubts of those who will always wonder if they could have done more. And no mission is worth any of that.
So that's the end of that documentary. Again, you can see a very inexperienced pilot who has clearly, wants to drop his daughter off and then get off again. He wants to get back home. He's got stuck in IFR conditions, but his mind is then set on landing and then getting back in the air. He's then indecision because he's trying to work out, well, can I go to this DuPage? No, that's IFR. And then you can see the indecision where he thinks he's going to go to Chicago Executive. That's kind of a plan that he's got because that's a VFR field. And then suddenly he just disregards the plan and says he's going to head back west. So that's all I can say on that, really.
I'm not sure whether he lost control or whether he deliberately crashed.
I think it's just the fact that he got stuck in IFR conditions. He wasn't trained for IFR flight. He got stuck in IFR conditions, trying to see where he was, with no real plan, no airport, just trying to navigate, and he just would have had no idea what was happening until the last minute, obviously, and when the aircraft's just going out of control, and then you've lost control of it in IFR conditions. You've got no idea where the ground is, and the horizon's just tilting, like he said on the video, and you're diving. So it's a difficult corner to get out of once you're stuck in it.
Yep.
Alright, thanks for watching this small documentary. Quite a sad story of the documentary, but hopefully it was interesting.